And there we go. All right, we're almost there. All right, now we're in business. There we go. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Now we're working here. Welcome and thank you for coming. Andy, thank you for hosting this. And I'd also like to thank Dr. McFadder-Harris for her support and the school district support of the initiative that we're putting together here within the school district. Just to give you a little background history of who I am.
Hey, Doug, I'm going to pause you really fast because we can't see the presentation. So we see a blank screen. Is there a PowerPoint window you can share instead of an internet window?
Bear with me 1 minute.
No worries. Thanks for helping us troubleshoot.
That's really weird. It should be working. So you cannot see, you're only seeing a blank screen. Got it. Okay. It's been a while since I've used this computer, so of course everything is popping up on it. Are you seeing that now?
We're seeing the preview of intersection of sport and wellness with high school student athletes. Do you want to open it in Google Slides and see if your internet browser window will open it?
Yeah, let me see here. Hold on. How's that?
Awesome. Thanks, Doug.
Boy, it's working for this one here today. Okay, is that still showing okay?
Yeah, I think it's loading because if you've clicked something, I just still see the same screen.
Yeah. Okay. You don't see this slide up there then?
Well, we see the slides, we see PowerPoint and the thumbnails on the side. So maybe we can work with that and it's not the presentation.
That's what we'll do. Yeah, I think we'll do with that. So you guys can see this one.
Patience, everyone. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. I have no idea. Okay. Well, we'll start. As you can see here in this slide, I just wanted to provide some background information to let you all know who I am and kind of my background and how I've gotten to where I am today. As you can see here, there's 3 pictures of me coaching. One of them is a 19-year-old Doug Gardner leading his local Babe Ruth 13-year-old all-star team to the California State Championship right after my freshman year of college. So that's a young me. It was my very first year coaching. I grew up playing baseball in Los Angeles, ended up hurting my shoulder, having surgery, and not to say I would go very far in my career, but that was my career. The middle picture is me coaching here in, I think that was Lafayette Little League. I forced my daughter to play Little League when she was 6. And so I was coaching baseball at Camp Lindo at the time. I was the assistant varsity baseball coach working with Max Luckhurst. And I spent 6 years coaching with Max. And then the third picture is holding up my daughter in a photo for Akalani softball. I coached Akalani softball with Victor, Coach Victor, from 2000 and, oh my goodness, 2010 to 2018. So it was a while that I was out there coaching. I share this only because I come into the work that I do in sports psychology, not only from an athletic perspective, but from a coaching background. It was coaching that really propelled me into this industry when I found out I could go to graduate school and watch ESPN, and that would count towards for my classes. And I spent 2 years up here in the Bay Area doing my master's degree, and then I moved out to Boston and finished my doctoral degree in ed psych, in a developmental psychology program that also provided counseling psychology. I just did not pursue licensure, so I'm not a licensed psychologist. So I don't call myself a sports psychologist. I work in the area of sports psychology or performance psychology, and usually call ourselves mental performance coaches or sport performance coaches to that degree. To give you a quick background of where I've worked in my career, I was very fortunate coming out of graduate school. I ended up working for the Boston Red Sox. So at the time I was 29 years old. There were 5 people working in Major League Baseball at the time. I became the 6th, and the other 5 averaged the age I currently am now, 54. So at that time, I was the youngest person working in professional sports. I worked in the minor league system for the Red Sox, built a sports psychology program and curriculum throughout their entire minor league system, which I served over 150 baseball players, over 30 coaches, and then additional staff. Worked my way up the system just like the players did, and ultimately started working at the major league level as players I worked with made it to the major league level. I had a nice 6-year run with the Red Sox. In total, I worked 11 years in Major League Baseball as players I worked with from the Red Sox minor league system went all over the league, and I was able to work with them and continue that work. So I was very fortunate to have my first job in professional baseball. I also started my private practice at the same time and moved to Lafayette from Boston back in 2002. And so while I was doing that, I bounced around while raising kids. I worked at Cal. I worked with their softball program, with the women's swimming and diving program in 2012, the year they won their second of back-to-back NCAA championships. Had a swimmer from that program make the Olympics, and was fortunate enough to continue working with her, where she medaled in the 2012 Olympics. In 2013, I moved to the NFL and kind of pitched the Players Association on a program that was around mental health and wellness for the players. This was really before athletes started advocating for themselves. Obviously, we know that athletes are people and people have mental health issues. It just was something that really was not talked about much. But of course, in the work that I did, I've always encountered it, always worked in partnership with licensed professionals so that we could provide performance and clinical services for athletes. For the union, I became the coordinator of mental training services. I built out large-scale educational curriculum and programming for the union, and worked with all the rookies transitioning into the league every year between 2013 and 2016. So I traveled to all 32 teams. I went to the NFL Combine, targeted the top 50 players in each year's draft, and provided services for them to help them grow as people and to grow as players. I was also kind of out there to deal with situations that you might have seen on TV, or I'd go out and assess and work with a team of professionals to help players get the resources and help that they need. And I even worked with retired players, and I worked with players kind of up the ecosystem, high school and the collegiate space as well. At the end in 2016, also had another Olympic athlete in fencing, and spent a lot of time working with Olympic fencers through the 2016 Olympics. I made an interesting left turn in 2017. There's this thing called esports. Your kids play video games, and you probably see them and you hear them saying, yes, I can go pro and make money at it. It is partially true. And as a way to test myself and kind of as a competitive junkie, I saw an opportunity to work in professional esports wanted to test myself to see if I could be relevant with 17, 18, 19-year-old non-athlete performers and meet them where they were and work in that space. I built out the first player development department in professional esports. Mostly it was based and still is in Los Angeles, literally in my backyard. So I was down in LA, living 5 days a week at my parents' house in my bedroom, working with young kids and watching them play video games all day and trying to build out concepts around physical and mental health to help them perform better. Since 2017 as well, I work with a lot of corporate executives. I work at Deloitte. Deloitte is the largest professional services company in the world, as well as with accounting. I work with, right now, currently 75 executives at Deloitte. They're called principals, partners, and managing directors. I work with them not just in executive coaching, but really on a concept of performance psychology. And we're trying to help them elevate their work, build their teams, become better leaders, and create better cultures for those that they serve. So that's just kind of a timeline of what I've been doing in addition to my private practice here and a lot of other things. Just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective of who I am, what I do, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to do here in the school district, hopefully. So, we got to a tipping point in really 2018 where finally professional athletes started talking about their issues and their struggles with mental health. So many of you probably know about Kevin Love, penned an article in The Atlantic talking about his mental health struggles with anxiety. And it's not just that you would credit Kevin Love with this, but his story was the one that really got national and international attention and started creating the opportunity for athletes to have safe spaces to talk about and share their own struggles, whether it's stuff that is sport related or things that have come and impacted them in their lives. Most recently, we've seen Naomi Osaka, not play, walk away from tennis for a while for her own mental health issues. There are many other stories of other athletes who have basically said, listen, I am a person and I play sports, but it is not what defines me, and I need to be able to take care of myself. Now, the one clear difference and the opportunity that these athletes and other athletes, Michael Phelps and others who have come forward and talked about their mental health struggles, is they've come from a position of privilege to a certain degree. They are at a point in their careers where they're more financially stable. They're able to talk about these issues without running into the risk or the repercussions of sharing these types of things would have on any other athlete who was not in the position that they were in. So it's wonderful that these people have come forward, and it's really opened the door for so many other usually young athletes and performers to talk about and heighten the aspects of mental health. The other thing to point out is that it's really from the ground up. I've been out there, others have been out there working in the trenches in the professional level and the collegiate space. But in a sense, the athletes have been the ones who've had to talk about it. It wouldn't be the NCAA or it would not be professional sports willingly providing these types of resources as they do when it comes to the physical side with doctors and athletic trainers and physical therapists and everything, strength and conditioning coaches. If it wasn't for the athletes bringing this to the limelight, there would be some level of resources, but the resources would be in the dark and the athletes would be afraid to come forward and share their struggles because it would impact their careers. And that's where we've seen that it isn't just like mental health issues with athletes has just obviously materialized. It's something that has occurred and been there in the ecosystem forever. It's just never been something, rub some dirt on it, get back up, you can do it. There was always these platitudes that made it so athletes did not feel safe to really disclose their struggles. And that's what was so powerful around 2018, that it started coming into the nomenclature that people could feel safe and talk about their struggles and seek resources, in a sense, almost forcing professional sport leagues and the NCAA and its institutions to start providing these types of resources for people who play sports. So it is critical to know that, and know that this is being pushed by the athletes, and then compare that to the nameless, faceless athletes who struggle with mental health issues, but feel that they still can't talk about it because the stigma attached to it, or the risk to their ability to do what it is that they love doing, i.e. sports. And so still, while these athletes are able to talk about it and be open about it, the majority, if not plurality, of athletes often suffer in silence and take huge risks to actually talk about it and open up about it. I briefly want to just share some brief data with you. Not to get too much in the weeds, but I think it's important to have some data to support the context of what it is that we're seeing at the collegiate level and the professional level. The NCAA does yearly studies. They haven't released the study for 2023. The reference for this is the NCAA Student Athlete Wellbeing Study from 2022. So it was looking at different measures for both, for a variety of demographics. But easy for this study, I just thought it would, or this presentation, I thought it would be best just to share kind of like what we're seeing in women's athletics and men's athletics. And this, obviously, some of this data is, I won't say skewed, but impacted by the pandemic. We know that student athletes and athletes really had a challenging time, just like everyone else did during the pandemic. So these numbers are, I would say, a hair elevated, but it'll be very curious to see what they look like in comparison to the numbers that will come out for the 2022 academic year. But the concepts of feeling overwhelmed to feeling mentally exhausted to the point where we would call that burnout. The numbers were high back in 2019. They were obviously higher during the pandemic. And if you look at those numbers, in fall of 2021, when athletes started to resume some level of normalcy in practicing and competing, the numbers stayed high. And I think it's critical to know that we're at a point to where this generation of student athletes can openly share these things, are more comfortable and confident to talk about mental health issues. And it's a tremendous opportunity from a generational perspective to be able to have that dialogue, to be able to address these issues and do it in an open way, so that others who don't feel like they can talk about it may learn to empower themselves to have a voice. So when you see these numbers with female athletes, in some ways we would expect self-reporting from female athletes to be more open in sharing this information. A lot of times male athletes might be a little more hesitant with kind of the male culture in sport. And so we'll see here that the numbers for men, while a little lower, are still high. And I just think that we can look at the data. You always have to look at data in context. You can't just look at it as in absolutes. And so for me, a lot of this is that back in 2019, when the talk of mental health issues was there, would male athletes be as receptive to really share how they honestly feel? Not sure. We don't know. We can't tease out the data to be definitive one way or the other about that. But you can see that the numbers did significantly rise to where you're dealing with 2/3 of male athletes feeling mentally exhausted, almost 8 out of 10 overwhelmed by everything that they've had to do. So once again, I think once the stigma has been broken, it makes people more inclined to share their personal stories and admit that, yes, they are having some struggles. To me, to give you a second to read this if you can, it's very telling that when you ask student athletes at the college level, do you know where the resources are available for you? Most of them do. 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 know that there are resources. They know where the resources are. Almost 6 out of 10 will try to help their teammates dealing with mental health issues and mental struggles. But then all of a sudden, less than 50% of individuals feel comfortable seeking out mental health resources at the collegiate level. We all know the horror stories that we've seen, whether it's at the collegiate level, the high school level, even at our community level, where we have students who participate in sports get to a point to where there has been, suicide. It is awful, it's terrible, and it's a situation that we can only hope that the awareness that this brings helps people not just seek mental health services earlier, but to also provide an educational platform to help people before they get to a breaking point to where they have the mental health issues to the point where it affects their lives. Another, I think, very telling statistic here is asking athletes if their coaches take mental health seriously at the collegiate level. You can see that the numbers aren't as high as you would want them to. That's a whole other topic of discussion that we can talk about here. But a lot of times the athletes are worried about losing their jobs. They're worried about losing their scholarships. They're worried about losing their opportunity to play and to achieve what it is they work so hard to get to. So once again, if you're not an athlete who's visible, you're probably going to be more reluctant to talk about these issues. The NCAA has really increased psychologists and counseling departments to serve student athletes. It is one of the leading areas where licensed mental health professionals in our industry are now seeking jobs and work and opportunities to help student athletes. I think the biggest concern for me and my colleagues when we talk about this, whether it's at the collegiate level or the professional level, there's often a conversation around how much damage that we see from the people who enter the collegiate space or enter the professional level, that their experiences coming up through the athletic ecosystem, whether it's the sport ecosystem itself or things outside of sport, there's a lot of damage. I mean, I can't say it any other way. I don't want to sound alarmist, but it is shocking how different the ecosystem is today and has been, let's say, over the last 7 to 10 years compared to when I first started this 25 years ago. And that is something that is what we're trying to get out in front of here in the school district, to see how we can help student athletes seek wellness services through the wellness center, and to also, be okay with not being okay and talking about it. Where are we in youth sport today? Some of you might recognize the name Dr. Nirav Pandya. Dr. Pandya is the head of orthopedic surgery for Children's Hospital Oakland. He's a colleague of mine. I operated on my daughter when she had ankle surgery at 11. Yes, 11 years old, damage from running on turf. She had microfracture surgery and she was out 9 months. And so I've experienced it firsthand with my own kid. And so, what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a tremendous amount of adult domination in youth sport. It just is what it is. Youth sport has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. There are maybe some of you in the audience who have spent a lot of money traveling and paying for your child to play sports. It has the monetization of youth sport is drastically changed over the past decade. It was growing and growing and growing, but now it's its own beast. And the pay to play model it's a tough model because, of course, it's exclusionary to many who can't afford it, but those who can end up specializing in their sport. They play year round. They travel to showcases. I call it showcase mentality because oftentimes you're playing on teams to go and showcase your skills, but where's the development? Where is the teaching of the life skills? Where is the teaching of the physical skills? Actually, you have to hire coaches to do that, whether it's a specialty coach for a sport, it's strength and conditioning coaches. But what we're really seeing, obviously, is a lot of people travel team hopping, trying to get to the next best team, to get in front of college coaches, trying to chase that Division I dream that very few athletes really attained. I mean, everyone knows the statistics, but irregardless of those statistics, people are definitely determined to help their children make it at the professional or at the collegiate level. And we know that, roughly anywhere between 2 and 5% of high school athletes will play their sport at the collegiate level. And so oftentimes we're seeing this mentality of Division I or bust, and that to me is very concerning, because it starts to create a tremendous amount of it can create psychological issues for the young athlete as they're developing their brains and developing themselves. One of the most interesting things I've seen recently is an article about how parents are chasing name, image, and likeness opportunities to see if they can monetize their kids playing sport as young as middle school through high school, so that they can tap into that market and possibly utilize that to make some money. So to me, that was a new one for me, but not surprising, because the opportunities are there, and it's clear that people are going to do what they can to get those opportunities to help their child get to the highest level. What are we seeing though? What has this all created? And that's kind of a dilemma. One of the things I see, and I think you all see it too as well, especially in this district and in this area, the vast majority of young people today, they're driven, they're focused, they're high achieving individuals. They give so much, yet even with all of that's demanded of them, their dedication can go unrewarded. Young people are highly susceptible to anxiety, to burnout, and other unacknowledged mental health challenges. Unfortunately, the data supports that these outcomes happen to more young people now because of academics and athletic demands. They're constantly comparing themselves to others. It's a recipe for self-depreciating anxiety and inducing thoughts that are only worsened by a lack of gratification from positive outcomes. And it's not just sports, it's academics. My son's in 11th grade. All of you know that these are really difficult times for them, whether they are participating in a sport or they're not. They're constantly comparing themselves to others. We're seeing the levels of anxiety through the roof. They can get 4.5 GPAs, take 5 AP classes, and still not be satisfied or gratified by being a student who gets great grades. Someone's always going to have better grades, a harder schedule, higher SAT score, and the same thing in sports. And the ones that know it, especially in sports, are the athletes. They will size themselves up compared to others, and usually they are the best people to talk about how good they are in comparison to others. While parents fawn over it, battle over it, compete over it, it wears on the mental health. And what we're seeing is, first, we're seeing disengagement. We're seeing young people treat sport like a job. And at some point, they will reach a point of burnout. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing young people leave sports at a variety of different ages now. It used to be very clear. It used to be 12, 15, and 18. If you look back 20 years and the data, it would be kind of when you ascend into middle school, when you go into high school, and when you leave high school. And so you would see these large numbers drop out. But for any of you whose kids haven't made, let's just say, the LAMO, I don't even know what they call it anymore. It used to be the blue team when my daughter was playing. And now you're going to Magic, or you're bouncing over to Walnut Creek Soccer Club or something like that. Or there's opportunities to play for an academy now that will get you in front of more scouts, collegiate scouts. We're seeing this movement and this constant aspect. And at some point, we're seeing a larger dropout of student athletes participating. And we're seeing those ramifications in high school. We're seeing it tougher to get freshman teams, tougher to get JV teams in specific sports. Some of the larger sports, it's easier to do because there's such a large number, but other sports, there's a huge struggle. What are we seeing? Also, we're seeing, I call it the same. Fear of failure and fear of success are the same thing. It's this: if I really work hard and I don't succeed, I'm going to let people down. Young people today aren't even as concerned about letting themselves down as they are about letting adults down. And if they succeed, then there's this element of, oh my goodness, I've had success, now I have to replicate it. And so this aspect of focusing on outcomes and end results, it becomes this circular narrative where young people really struggle with that, because it's not sustainable. And so oftentimes people withhold effort, whether they're having success or they're not, and they fear not being perfect. They want to make sure that they can look good amongst and with their peers, not really against them. And that is a huge, huge element. And that's why I broaden this out to not just sports, but within the culture of young people today. Obviously, I mentioned anxiety. Young people today struggle with a low self-concept. And in a sense, there's really a loss of control. What do I have control over? All I hear is everybody wanting to play at the next level. I hear my peers talk about it. There are parents talking about it in the stands. And we're seeing young people today not really have a locus of control and be able to focus on something that they can do to actually improve and enjoy participating in sport. At the severe levels, we're seeing depression. We're seeing clinical depression. And that depression can lead to so many different issues, obviously, and for self-harm. And we're seeing that. And that is really scary. Also, another important aspect is body image and eating disorders. There is a lot of pressure for a lot of athletes in a variety of sports to where they're going to compare their body to others. They're going to think that they're not big enough, strong enough, skinny enough. There's pressure to have to either get bigger and stronger and eat a lot or lose weight. And so there are elements related to eating disorders as well. So it's I don't want to sound, discouraging. I mean, obviously sport does provide some elements that are tremendous and opportunities to grow, but it's just that the system itself, the ecosystem, has really become the leading driver of mental health issues. It had been people struggling with things outside of sport and in their life. But what we're really seeing in the trends right now is that the sport ecosystem and involvement in sport is leading to mental health struggles amongst its participants. And that's really what is most concerning. What I'd like to do here just for the next few slides is turn this over to Andy. I'd like Andy to kind of talk a little bit about the wellness centers, the wonderful wellness centers that we have in all 4 schools. And I'm going to just kind of do the slides for you, Andy, if that's okay. So we'll go to the next slide, and it's all on you here. Thank you so much.
Fabulous. Thanks, Dr. Gardner. So I have really appreciated, Dr. Gardner, how you've introed for us kind of the current state of what's going on with the mental health within athletes broadly. And, if we apply that to the athletes in our district, to the student athletes who are on our campuses every day. So one thing that we are going to start to build for you, a better understanding of is what we already have in place when it comes to student wellness. So each of the comprehensive high schools is fortunate enough to have its own wellness center. And I think the thing that's most associated with the wellness center is our counseling services, where we match students to work with a counselor for one-on-one support on whatever topic is present for those students. However, in addition, we do a lot of skill building, psychoeducation, meaning we teach students about how anxiety works, about how stress works, about sleep hygiene and how to build healthy sleep habits. We also offer support groups, consultations with parents or guardians if parents and guardians have questions about what might be going on with their students. We've built a pretty significant effort around school-wide programs. So these might be lessons or groups available to all students on a variety of topics, such as how to manage stress. We also offer crisis support. So Dr. Gardner alluded to the fact that regardless of whether a student is an athlete or not, there is a significant issue at hand with self-harm or suicidal ideation, and the Wellness Center can intervene and offer support if that's something a student is encountering. And finally, We offer some support and consultation with our staff. So whether that's training the staff on what signs to look for when it comes to a student's mental health that might be impacted, or in addition, how to lead mindfulness in the classroom to help reduce overall stress levels. And yeah, you can go ahead, Doug. Thanks so much. The kind of a data point we wanted to share with you, this is across all of the centers from August and September only. So just the first few months of school, we had over 3,000 sign-ins or visits to our wellness center spaces. And what that shows us is students are coming to access the support they need when they're in times of distress. That being said, Dr. Gardner also showed us earlier in the presentation how although the athlete population may know how to seek services on their campuses, they don't always reliably seek out mental health care, or in this case, the wellness center, when they are in crisis or having a hard time. So part of what we'll dive into in the next few slides is how the program that we're building and rolling out in order to get wellness to the athletes where they are, right? Which is the field, the court, or the pool. So Dr. Gardner, back to you.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. Yes, and so we started, Andy and I and Dr. McFadder Harris started having these conversations at the beginning of the school year. They made it clear to me that they weren't really seeing the athlete population coming into the wellness center as other students. And since we know that, I'm not sure the exact number, but it's somewhere around 60%, 70% of high school students do participate in some sport in one shape or form or another, we're missing a lot of people there. And so one of the first things that I said was, well, we have to bring wellness to the athlete, because the athletes they may not come to the wellness centers, and because of the data. And so what we're doing now is we're kind of had to build through some of our ideas and concepts about how to start. We thank you to Miramani for kind of starting this with us to do this kind of pilot program. Today we spent day on campus, walking around, meeting coaches, meeting the athletic trainer, talking to some student athletes. Is day one of what we're doing, which we think that the program itself will grow and get some legs. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I do want to share some of the goals of this pilot program. And as I said, it's really about driving engagement with student athletes. We're not trying to put student athletes on a pedestal or separate them from the regular student population. We're just targeting this with them. We want to meet them where they are. And that's a very important thing, whether it's a student athlete or it's a student or it's just anybody. We always want to try to meet them where they are instead of trying to put something onto them. The goal is to really reduce mental health stigma so that people who do participate in sports don't have to have a wall built in front of them that they feel like they can't break, that they're human too. And it's so important. And we believe that by doing this, that we're going to bring more visibility to the wellness center and to the wonderful people who staff the wellness centers at all 4 schools. It's Andy, other leaders of the wellness centers, and the interns that come and get their clinical hours while working in the wellness centers to provide a lot of these resources. A tremendous goal for us is to collaborate with coaches and staff. It's absolutely critical to have the support of adults. If we can get the adult people in charge, the leaders, the mentors, the coaches, to talk about these issues, to recognize these issues, to train them, then we can get to people quicker and have a greater impact on them. With the ultimate goal, like I said, to increase the student athlete interaction with the wellness center staff. We're hoping that if we go to them, that they'll come to the wellness center, once they understand what it is that we're doing. And ultimately, I've always viewed, and I think this has shifted for me over the years, is that with the advent of year-round sports, and with so many athletes playing with their travel or their club teams mostly year-round, not that high school sport has lost its meaning. I don't want to say that at all, but high school is one of the few places now where you actually get to play with your friends more. You're not playing with a random group of people that might be going to a variety of different high schools, that might even live in other states. We're seeing, you know, all kinds of stuff when it comes to that. But I really do personally believe that we can leverage the high school sport environment as a safe space so that while they're playing their sport, they can also explore more about themselves and grow as people so that they can grow as they mature and they leave high school, whether they continue playing sport or not. The curriculum, we'll be building out a curriculum, and it's very important. It's something that I have a specialization in. I've been doing a lot of curriculum and program developing for most of my career. And it's very important to understand that this is grounded in theory and research. We're not just jumping on fads. We're not just kind of just going, okay, well, we're going to do the latest thing on, you know, while meditation, mindfulness, don't get me wrong, are important. If that's all we have, or we call them mental skills, then there's not much that's going to stick and resonate with people, because we really want to challenge young, smart people to think and become autonomous and to be strong autonomous thinkers. And so a lot of the ideas and concepts that we're going to be building around are around the concepts of educational psychology. We're not just coming in with a clinical narrative of somebody's broken. We want to provide young people with the tools from a theoretical standpoint so that we can provoke thought. Thought provokes awareness, and awareness elicits change, development, and growth. So as you can see here, the work will be grounded in concepts related to self-determination theory. We want people to have cognitive control so they can regulate their emotions, think through things, and manage the emotions that fall under an umbrella from fear to anger and everything else that falls into place. The name of my business is called Think Sport. I believe in the power of thinking. And so the concepts related to deliberate detachment are very important to me. I want to help the people I work with work through their emotions. We can't stop emotions. We can't take a deep breath, clear our minds, become our favorite flower, think something positive, and go out there and perform great. It just doesn't work that way. I wish it did, but it doesn't. If it was, there would be some magic fairy dust. We can sprinkle it on people, and then they can go back out there and play at a great level all of the time. We need them to think. I want my athletes to think. If I do my job well, the people I work with think, and they make decisions and they make choices, and then that leads to actions. And that's what I want, a locus of control. I think it is absolutely important. Emotional resilience. You're going to fail. I didn't really like to use that word, but I use it here. People are going to have difficulty. We all had difficulties growing up. We all had challenges. We worked hard to get where we are. And I think a lot of times we're trying to protect young people from those experiences, and we don't want them to experience failure or setbacks or challenges. That's where we grow. And so that is, to me, where we're helping people learn adaptive coping behaviors. A lot of times people have what we would call maladaptive or bad coping behaviors, and then those become patterns, and then those patterns lead to things that can create mental health issues for people. So it's very important that we can recognize emotion, that we can learn how we can start to move ourselves from emotional thinking to more of a logical thinking, to more of an objective thinking. Some people call it neutral thinking. I don't like that term because neutral insinuates you're not really going anywhere. I want to help people normalize their thought process to realize that, you know, it's okay to struggle. It's okay to be upset. Now I have choices in how I'm going to work to get better, whatever that means. And that's a larger definition that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people in different contexts. But most importantly, it comes down to self-regulation. We want people to be able to regulate themselves. We want them to be able to make decisions that are clear, that are objective, and they're not emotionally based. If we can do that, then we're producing productive young adults entering into the world that have skill sets that will help them face the adversity that they're inevitably going to face at every phase and every stage of their lives. Next steps for what we're really trying to do here is the goal. I mean, it's a lofty goal, but I think we can do this, is that the goal is to really try to launch this program in all 4 high schools and use the wellness centers and the resources with the wellness centers in partnership with myself, and bringing in other people trained in psychology, and or graduate students to start getting the word out. Everybody I've talked to at all 4 wellness centers are very excited. I know a lot of parents, obviously, in the neighborhood, and when I talk about this, there's a lot of excitement from those parents saying we really need this in the schools. And listen, I agree. I've always had a dream of being able to do something like this. I'm at a point in my life to where I can actually dedicate the time to doing this, and I'm excited about what can happen. You know, one of the other things too is that this is important to me, and we've talked about this at great length, is that if we look at all of the kids in the schools, I don't know what the numbers are, but I would bet probably 90% of them are engaged in some extracurricular activity. And so I don't want this to just be about student athletes. I want this to be about all students. I want to be able to reach out to the kids in drama, the kids in band. My son's at mock trial today, performing for the first time live in 3 years. And I had to miss that. So I'm kind of bummed, but I'm happy to be here as well. But, you know, we know that it's meeting them where they are once again. And so it's not just sports, it's every other thing that they're doing that is a school-sponsored event provides us with an opportunity to create an educational environment or a classroom to talk about the educational components around positive mental health. Parent and coaching education programs are critical. It is absolutely critical. My hope is that we can create something that is somewhat mandatory for coaches. All coaches go through trainings every year. I went through trainings all the years that I coach, and we're hoping that we can build something internal in the district that helps coaches learn more and can see and be armed with tools to recognize and help young people, to help guide them to the right resources and to recognize the struggles that they're going through. Doesn't mean that they're going to catch them all, but if they're a first line of defense, that's going to help the wellness center and all of us do our jobs and help our kids have a healthier life. And then the other long-term goal is to really develop peer leadership and mentoring. It's the modeling of behavior that is so important in this, is that if a freshman or sophomore student athlete sees a senior or a junior talking about mental health and the things that they're trying to do, whether it's rest and recovery, it's healthy eating, it's mindfulness training or meditation, whatever it is that they're doing, if they see their peers do it and the ones that they look up to, they will be more apt to follow suit. And so we're really trying to lean on the student athletes and their leadership skills to set an example, to model the behavior for others. And if we can do that, then it legitimizes it, just like when the professional athletes started speaking about this and started legitimizing the conversations around mental health issues. So that's what we're trying to do. Really excited about it. Looking for your support, your feedback as parents. It play a critical role in all of this. As in anytime I work with my clients, it's something that I really try to focus on. I work with athletes, but I have to work with the parents as well, because you're the ones who see them perform and prepare and interact with them the most. And so when we triangulate the information and we start speaking a common language, a vernacular, a lexicon, whatever that is, if we can start changing that and improving that and elevating it, then we're really meeting them where they are, and we're helping them use sport as a classroom. And that's what it is for me. I'm an educator, and sport is my classroom. And that, to me, is an underutilized space to help young people learn and grow. We have an expectation that coaches will fill that void. Okay, but a lot of times, and it's to no one's fault, coaches aren't trained as educators. We don't have as many teachers within a school being coaches anymore. I know that used to be the case when we were all in high school. There were most of them were teachers, PE teachers probably, but they were trained. They had some information and training in pedagogy and education. And so now we're putting those expectations on external people who love to coach, who have a passion for coaching, but may not be fully trained. And so that's what we're really hoping for is can we make this 8th period or 9th period? Can we use life lessons and sport itself, winning and losing, doing your best, but not getting what you want? Any of those types of circumstances, can we use those as learning tools and create a learning environment so that they can walk away from their athletic career, whether it's in middle school or high school or at the college level, being more holistic and being more true to themselves and have grown. So with that, I will definitely turn it over for questions. If anybody wants to contact me, it's my cell phone number, it's my email address. I'm more than happy to talk with you, answer any questions outside of this, but obviously here, whatever questions people have, would love to talk about them more. So thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Dr. Gardner. We do have a question in the Q&A. So for all of y'all still with us, if you have a question, please feel free to type it out in the question and answer bar along the bottom. And so Doug, I'll read this out loud for you if you can give us some of your thoughts. The question is, what advice would you give parents who want to support their child's efforts to compete at a high level? For example, helping them with travel costs to competitions, physical therapy as needed, good nutrition, but without making the child feel any pressure to succeed. Sometimes as parents, we struggle to know how to travel to games or to take appointments, to prepare meals without our child worrying that they may need to meet some standard of performance.
It's a great question. And it's tough because in some ways, what I've found fascinating and stressful at the same time is that regardless of what we do, regardless of our intentions, there are many parents that I talk to that say, I just want my kid to have a chance and I'm not putting any pressure on them. And I believe them. And at the same time, it's the kids that internalize that stress and pressure. No matter what we say or no matter what we do, they feel like they could let us down. How many athletes do I hear say to me, if I quit, I'm not sure what my dad will do on weekends. I'm not sure what my parents will do. Will they be upset? They've invested so much money in me. And so I think that there is this element that, I'm not trying to sound defeatist at all either, that we will say that. I've had to say that to my own children and myself. My daughter played softball, but she didn't want to play travel. She tried and she just wasn't going to commit to it. And I just couldn't put that pressure on her. I couldn't be a hypocrite. My son was a pretty good fencer when he was young. And he got to a point where he was like, I don't want to fence 5 days a week. And I couldn't sit there and say, okay, I wanted to push him a little bit and I did, but then it got to a point to where I had to back off. And I was like, look, it's your life. You have to make that decision. You have to want it. And I think that's where it's important. How can we help build intrinsic motivation? How can we help them think through the reasons why they're participating and competing in their sports while also maintaining realistic expectations? Okay, like I always say this, that college is a 40-year decision, not a 4-year decision. I see the student athletes in this neighborhood, in this area, in this district. I see tremendous, obviously, academic students, and I see very good athletes. And I'm like, why aren't we having more athletes going and playing in Division III? Why aren't we going to where we can help our kids get into the best schools and they can play a sport, but it isn't sport and then school. And so I think as parents, it's being aware of what you're hearing from those parents who are Division I or bust. It is the concepts of how are you, possibly without knowing it, modeling behaviors where you're comparing your child to others, or you're getting caught up in that talk, because then all of a sudden they're comparing themselves to others as well. Ultimately, we want people to compare themselves to themselves. We want young people to understand that you can work hard, do your best, and still not have success. And we have to be okay with the fact that they may not make that team. I think parents also have to recognize to the point to where their son or daughter just wants to play, but doesn't want to play all the time. So we have to give them that space, and we have to have those real conversations with them and let them know that you're okay with those answers, because they're just not inclined to share that with you because they don't want to let you down. But what I'm seeing, and that's kind of what's been striking for me over the last, I would say 5 years, especially, is the kids are silent. They're not saying anything. They're going along with it because they think that's what they're supposed to do. But at some point, they don't really like playing that sport at that level with that pressure around them, especially when you get to 10th and 11th grade. 12th is interesting because if you haven't got any interest in playing at the next level, then you see a lot of seniors enjoy themselves and play, but you also see a lot of them quit because they don't have to play anymore because they didn't, not quote, good enough to be able to make it to the next level. And so I think we have to embrace their enjoyment factor versus what transactional aspect this will be. If we commit to this sport, what will it get us? Because it reminds me a lot, and I don't know if any of you parents remember this, but there was a parent who put together a movie maybe a decade ago or so called The Race to Nowhere, and it's very similar to that. We're on this trek competing against everybody else, and if you really knew how the sausage was made at the collegiate level and the transfer portal and everything that's going on, it's big business. And the sad part is that the collateral damage is often the young student athlete. Very few start a collegiate career and spend 4 years in that collegiate career. And so that to me, I think, is being realistic and being honest and having those conversations with your child so that you're giving them the space to share with you what they really think.
Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Gardner. Y'all, as you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If not, we don't have any outstanding or any waiting questions, Dr. Gardner. So I don't know if you have any last remarks for folks. Maybe we can stay around to answer any questions, but yeah, any last words for us, Dr. Gardner?
Well, I hope that tonight's conversation, a little rough start here with the technology, apologize about that, but I hope that it kind of helps people understand what we're trying to do within the district. An educational program helping people to learn to be empowered, to think for themselves, to act upon those thoughts, and to be in a position where they can be rational thinkers and feel like they're in control of their lives. Ultimately, that's what we want to do. Everybody's sport career will end at some point in time. And after that, we really want to make sure that the identity is not wrapped up in that sport, but it's wrapped up in the effort, the persistence, the working at something to improve without the guaranteed results of that. And that's the hardest thing. There's really only one winner. There's always one champion at the end, you know, and I'll just leave you with this interesting paradox. I worked with a swimmer, as I said earlier, in the 2012 Olympics. And I started working with her before she made the Olympic team. And she approached me because she wasn't swimming in practice and in competitions and dual meets. She wasn't swimming or even close to, you know, good times. Clearly not her PRs. And you don't just get to and swim at your PR or beat your PR all the time. That's why it's a PR, personal record, for those of you who don't know. And very long story short, we worked through the season. She was actually NCAA Swimmer of the Year in 2012. And she was basically carried the Cal swim team on her back and winning their back-to-back NCAA championships, 2011, 2012. She makes the Olympic team. She makes the Olympic finals. And in the finals, she PRs. She swims the fastest time of her life in the most important race of her life. She finished in third place. The first thought, she got a bronze medal. It's amazing. One of 3 people to medal in her event. She finished in third. You could also look at that race and say she lost because she finished in third place. But she PR'd. And I think it's a philosophical question more than it is anything else, because we can all say, what an amazing race. She got a bronze medal, amazing. And it was. But at the end of the day, she did her best. She didn't win. And it's a really interesting paradox for me, and I think for others, to really contemplate that you can do your best, and you could do your best when it matters the most and still not get what you want. And so for that, that is really important, because I believe that your kids are out there, especially if they're committing to year-round sport and in travel, doing their best. Their best may not be good enough to get to the next level, to win the championship, whatever that external outcome is. And at the end of the day, the only thing they have control over is their effort, their mindset, and their ability to make sense of things. And that's where we as adults come in to help shape that narrative. And so I think that's the thing that I walk away. What I love about sports so much is that you win and you lose. And the one thing, being involved in sport all my life, coaching since I was 18, I'm almost 55, I've won as much as I've lost, and I've lost as much as I've won. And I've learned from it, and I've grown, and I've learned to compete in my own way. What I call, and my ultimate goal for the athletes I work with, is to compete regardless, to compete whether you think you can win or you think you might lose, but to go out there and compete, to truly compete without the fear of what will happen if I lose, or if I win, what expectations will that create for me? And so for me, that is an absolutely critical piece of the puzzle, is to help them learn to compete regardless and walk away from any event or any competition, knowing that they did their honest best. And it's okay if that 6'7" swimmer beat your kid. You know, there's always going to be someone better than you. And that's the case for almost everybody, except for the rare few Michael Phelps of the world. And then if you look at Phelps and then you ask at what cost? And I don't know if Michael Phelps would give up the medals and the fame and everything if he could not have mental health issues. I mean, I don't know. And I don't think we all know those. We can't answer that. I don't even know if he could answer that. So I just think that we have to kind of keep it in its perspective and treat it like it's a classroom and it's an opportunity to grow in life. And I'll kind of leave you with that.
Thanks so much, Dr. Gardner. Thank you so much, everyone who joined us tonight. We will stay on for 2 last minutes to linger if anyone has a last question. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming. And we hope to see you on the court, on the field, on the pool. Take care.
Hey.
All right. Okay. Charlie's on. He can't talk back to us, but he's the only other participant left.
Okay. Charlie.
It went well. Actually, I think I can allow him to talk. Charlie, you're now in the Zoom if you wanted to join.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
We can.
We can.
Nice.
We can't
Yeah,
see you.
my Zoom on my computer is whack.
Oh no, Doug. Yeah.
No, not this one. I brought my other laptop because I was worried, and I don't know what's going on. It's weird.
Total bummer. I thought it went great. How are you feeling?
I feel good. I mean, it's
we're still recording. Let me end this. Oh God.